Hello and welcome. Move the Line, presented by 4for4 Bets. I'm Ryan Noonan, joined here, as always, by my friend Connor Allen to continue our divisional series. We are unpacking the NFC North today, continuing to move along here in the NFC. We've already got to the NFC East. Last week, we did the NFC South. You can find those on the 4for4 Bets YouTube channel or Move the Line wherever you listen to podcasts. Thumbs up, like, subscribe, wherever you do that. Go back and check those out. Excited to keep the ball moving here. This is obviously the best one we've had yet, Connor, and arguably the case can be made that this is the best division of football.
Yeah, I'm pumped. We worked through two divisions that were a lot less competitive, and now I think that there's like three very clear teams that could potentially win this division, plus a fourth team that we'll get there when we get there. But I think there's three very, very strong teams, to say the least.
Yeah, tough spot for the fourth one, but someone's got to be fourth in the division, and we'll be interested to see what we have to discuss there. But obviously, you want to check out all that we have going on at 4for4. You want access to all the official plays that we have, and really all that we do over at 4for4. You need to get a betting subscription. The betting subscription gets you access to everything. So if you're still grinding season long or best ball, you want to get in the IDP streets with me and hang out and talk about third linebackers and, fourth safeties for teams. I'd love to do that with you. So you want to check us out. 4for4.com/plans is the best way to do that. And again, that gets you the top tier sub, which is going to give you everything that we have. There's lots of different ways to take advantage of some of the partnerships that we have. If you want to get 2 months for the betting subscription, you can get a new Underdog subscription membership there. You can check that out on our Twitter feed over at 4for4 Football. You probably have an Underdog subscription. As I tweeted it out yesterday. Does your wife, your significant other, your brother get creative here? They probably don't want the 4for4 sub like you would, but take advantage of it. Hey, look, I'm going to give you some picks. We'll play some pick 'em. We'll do some best ball drafts. And then, hey, by the way, you're going to get an email. Send it over here. I want to take advantage of the 4for4 sub. So check that out. Head over to the Twitter feed at 4for4 Football and get more information there as well. All right, Connor. This is, again, top heavy. We've seen some divisions over the last handful of years where, you get multiple playoff teams. Feels like this would be a scenario where it'd be pretty surprising if we didn't have multiple playoff teams here. But again, it's football. Still got to play the games. We're a week away from football, right? We're Thursday. We're recording here on Thursday. Next Thursday, we got the Hall of Fame game, right? With the Bears and Texans. Like football it's close, people. We are almost here. So from the top level, the NFC North here, they are playing divisionally the NFC West and the AFC South, which is a little bit easier. Then obviously we have the unique three, and that kind of is an interesting thing to discuss here as well. So we'll start with the Lions. They are your favorites here in the division. They are 12-1 on DraftKings and FanDuel to win the Super Bowl. You can get them at plus 550 to win the division. To win the conference. They are plus 150 on DraftKings to win the division. Win total, pretty flat juice-wise, 10.5 at most spots. It's, I think, tough to look back on a season that ended with, I think you'd have to classify it, I guess, as a collapse in the NFC Championship game and still call the season a success. But I think Detroit really exceeded expectations across all levels last year. At this time last year, they were getting roasted for the draft class that they had, right? And I remember you and I talking about it on the post-draft show. We really liked the players and felt like from like an order standpoint and from like a positional value standpoint, it didn't make a ton of sense. They were like getting dragged in any like post-draft grade piece that you would read. We like the players. Turns out all four of them were awesome. Were a huge piece of the run that they had last season. Imagine that. And I don't know. I think part of what they did this offseason, probably one of the biggest moves any team made, was really not even a move. They retained both coordinators. Aaron Glenn interviewed for 4 spots. Ben Johnson had his pick of any job that he wanted, and they're back. Huge expectations for the Lions here.
Yeah, massive. I mean, we have them as the number 1 ranked offensive line. They retained Ben Johnson. Reports about Jameson Williams are like sky high. So it's been like they have an elite offense. It's literally, I think, going to come down to Jared Goff continuing to be above average and playing within the system offensively, at least. And so when I looked at this team, I was like, okay, well, I mean, this is going to be a top 5, top 6 offense, like pretty much automatically. The defense is where I want to talk about, though, because they added a bunch of players. They added DJ Reader, difference maker on the defensive line, Marcus Davenport, defensive end. They added Carlton Davis, drafted both Terrion Arnold and Ennis Rakestraw, 2 guys that I think were pretty good values. They were pretty bad last year defensively, 21st in EPA, 25th against the pass. But DJ Reader is more of like a run stuffer. Like from my understanding, like, he's not really necessarily going to be an impact in the passing game. So are they going to be better? Probably. But like, are they a top 10 defense all of a sudden? I'm not quite there yet. Like, I think that they're probably a fringe 15 unit. I'm curious to hear your thoughts, though, as someone who's a little bit more deeper on the defensive side.
Yeah. I mean, you rattled off some of the moves, and I think it was a good offseason. They did this last offseason, right? Last offseason, they tried to make some splashes in the secondary in particular, because it was just kind of a mess last year. And then again, they had injuries and they were picking dudes off of practice squads and playing them, and it wasn't great. And they have a similar situation up front as the Bears have, right? Is they have kind of an anchor defensive end from a pressure standpoint with Aiden Hutchinson, who I think is like, he was number 2 pick in the draft. Everyone thought he was going number 1, but I think it's okay to say that Aiden Hutchinson has even maybe exceeded expectations, right? We were joking about like, the T-Rex arms, and weren't really sure if he was going to be a guy that would translate to the next level. But he has. He was awesome last year. I think Aaron Glenn deserves a lot of credit for what he does scheme-wise, because they were second in pressure rate last season, and they just don't have a dude outside of Hutchinson. Part of that is they do a really good job at creating one-on-ones for Hutch. They basically, the way that they'll bring and simulate pressure kind of eliminates teams' ability to double team him. And I think that's just great coaching. Campbell deserves a lot of credit for that, as Jeff in the chat is talking about too. Like they do a really good job at setting up and playing to the strengths of their players. The Carlton Davis thing, you got to love. Like, he cannot stay on the field. He's going to play at most 14 games. It's what he's done throughout his entire career, but he's still a young kid. The Arnold and Rakestraw picks, I think, are really nice. Branch is a Swiss Army knife. They kind of pigeonholed him last year into like slot stuff, but they drafted him thinking he's kind of a safety. He can do everything. I think he becomes even more of a focal point. They really wanted a lot from their second year guys last year from an edge standpoint with Pascal and Houston, and there were injuries there. I think they're a little bit better. Marcus Davenport's another guy that just can't really stay healthy too, but when he plays, he's good. So like they have more bodies. When they lose some guys, they're going to still be able to, I think, sustain the war of attrition there. And if Hutch realizes his upside, like PFF has a, expected sacks number. I think he should have been second in sacks last year. He's like 4.5 sacks based off of his underlying metrics, like pressure rate, quick pressure rate, quarterback hits, pass rush win rate, all those things. Like there's a ceiling that Hutch has that he didn't really even reach last year too. So I think it can be a really good unit too. Like Aylin McNeil up front is good. Reader solid up front. If they can solidify a little bit more in terms of what they can do from a run stuffing standpoint, like Jack Campbell out of the 4 guys that they picked early last year, didn't really do much. Didn't really have to, but like that's another guy that just has a nose for the football too. So I think there's a lot of upside here. And if they stay healthy, that's going to be a great problem for them to have.
Yeah, I mean, I think they might be one of the best run defenses in the league. I forgot there were some Aleem McNeil splits as well last year, I think, in the run defense. And they were still top 5 run defense. So like, it's like one of those things where they can be really strong this year. Some other notes: first 7 games and 13 of 14 games indoors to start the season, which I think matters a lot for baby hands Goff, who like literally can't catch a break when he's outdoors. And then they're favored in 13 games this season, including 6 of their first 7, all of them by more than 3. Yeah.
Connor's getting his roof worked on. So it doesn't sound like someone's trying to get into the room that he's in or get out of the room that he's in.
Is it loud? They're directly above me. Literally, this has been a complete nightmare. But yeah, directly above me.
Again, I think it's probably way louder for you. I heard a little bit there, but it's not bad. Okay. I just want people to know that you don't have any hostages in your room. No one's trying to actually climb out here. So it's not Dan Campbell. You're trying to restore the roar. So yeah, I mean, I touched on this. I don't know. I remember it was a week last year, and there was just some of the Goff stuff when you dig into it, and you and Clark pushed back on me pretty hard. But like Goff with a clean pocket is like, he's not just good, dude. Goff with a clean pocket, and look, that's what they've done. they've given him the best offensive line. So like the expectation is Goff is going to work from a clean pocket at a higher rate than anyone else. He's elite from a clean pocket. I mean, like it's really hard to argue that he's not elite from a clean pocket standpoint. And even from a like under pressure, no one's really good under pressure. When you look at like PFF grade, he's like 11th under pressure. He was like 15th in success rate. So he's still middle of the pack. It's, you know, it's under pressure in the cold and the elements where the baby hands become a problem. But like when he's protected, like they win. He's accurate. Where does he win? He wins over the middle of the field. He doesn't like to throw to the perimeter. Well, what do? They have one of the best slot receivers in the league, and they have an insane tight end in his second year in Sam Laporta. So like where they work offensively is over the middle of the field. So it works really well. It's just a really good coaching that safely, smartly designs what they're doing around the strengths of their team. Everyone wants to talk about Jameson Williams. We kind of need him to be the guy, but like, yeah, theoretically he has to be the wide receiver too. But with the way they use Laporta, it kind of like don't. If he stumbles and he's just kind of okay, like they'll be all right. I think as long as the problem is Amon-Ra needs to be in bubble wrap until the season gets here, and they just need to keep him healthy because that's a problem, right? No Amon-Ra, or if something happens to Laporta, that becomes a little bit of a problem. But the way they use the running backs too, I don't know. I think that they can get creative and continue to be a top five. They've been top five in DVOA offensively in the 2 years that Ben Johnson's been in charge.
Yeah, I think they're also set up in a very like anti-fragile way. I was thinking about this the other day. It's like them and like the 49ers, like they just have a really good roster and like really good coaching. And so like say Jared Goff gets injured, or like, you know, it's one of the key critical pieces that like you would think like, you know, on another team's like basically the season's over. For the Lions, like that's not necessarily the case because they can rely on the running game if they want to. They can rely on, you know, again, their weapons just being so much better that even if they throw in a backup, like they'd probably be okay, at least like solid, like passable. And so the defense was already bad last year. So I think it's kind of only upwards from here. So for me, it's like, I think in my divisional parlay that I think I put the Bears to win the division. If I had to redo that, I'm probably putting the Lions. I mean, they're just like a really good team, top to bottom. So Lions to win the NFC North plus 140, I don't think is a bad look, even with the Packers and Bears, I think kind of knocking on the door here. They're just, in my mind, like a step above roster-wise and floor-wise, to be transparent, like overall here. So I think that's a pretty solid look.
Right. I mean, we went into the very end of the fourth quarter, and we thought we were watching the game together. We thought the Lions were going to the Super Bowl, right? I mean,
they should have.
Yeah, which is again like they would have been tougher too, and obviously it's tougher. And you heard that. I think there was some good stuff. It was again part of the Campbell's, I think, brilliance and the appeal of his authenticity was, they came out of that presser and he was just like, hey, I just told my guys, like we might not get back here. It's so hard to do it. And next year is going to be harder. So like, be proud of yourselves. This is really hard to do. And like, most teams are just like, oh yeah, we just got here and we're a young team and we're going to get back. And he knows that it's harder, right? They exceeded expectations. They're going to have more of a bullseye. They're not going to catch anyone off guard. But like, as you said, the anti-fragile nature of, I think, the roster and how they win and how they're set up to win, it's really hard not to be bullish on the Lions. So even with the strength of the division, I'm kind of with you. I don't know that those are like plays that I'm firing or pushing out for subscribers and saying, hey, you got to jump on this, but it's a damn good football team.
Yeah, I almost think the more that I look at the NFC in general, like I want to kind of maybe buy some like Lions or Eagles in the NFC to make the Super Bowl instead of just the Niners. So I think that they're a little bit closer than what the market's suggesting right now. But and those two teams are a tier above kind of the Packers, Cowboys, Falcons, which is the next three there. So I don't know. I'm toying with how to play it best, but maybe I'll fire some long stuff for fun.
Yeah. I'm interested in I don't love the price, but I don't know what I would love the price at, but like to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl, feel plus 550 feels, I don't know if it feels like a good price, but I'm interested in it. I just conceptually, the Lions going to the Super Bowl feels like a thing that I can get my mind around the season. So we'll have to watch that one a little bit closer. All right, here next we have we'll shift to the Packers. Oh, one other thing on the Lions you called out too, like the games indoors. Like they play 3 games outdoors all season, and they don't not until week 9. The only game with weather that's a real threat feels like the Chicago game in week 16. So that just bodes really well for how they win and kind of keeping Goff in the ideal scenario. So it's just kind of nuts. All right, now Packers 19-1 to win the Super Bowl. That's on DraftKings. You can get them on DraftKings or FanDuel to win the NFC at 8-1. Caesars has the best price to win the division at +2.25. Win total is juiced out 9.5 to the over pretty much everywhere there too. And look, we were bullish on the Packers last season during this section. Clark went as far as to make them his Super Bowl pick, which did not look great after they lost 4 in a row. We're 2-5 to start the season. But again, the expectations, they were the youngest team in the league. Maybe we should have known better, but they flipped a switch. Primarily Jordan Love. I think Matt LaFleur deserves a ton of credit as well. He's touched on too, like he felt they were too conservative, especially early in the season with the young pass catching core and with Love oversimplifying things a little bit through week 9. It was a struggle. And they kind of started to change the way they did some stuff. They got a little bit more, add a little bit more motion. The motion rate jumped from like 48.5% of their plays and 42% of their dropbacks up to like 55 and 60%. Just massive spike in DVOA, massive spike in just all the things that we were seeing from Jordan Love. They were taking a lot of deep shots early in the season. There was a lot of like, man, like Love he's getting the ball out quick. He's protected. The offensive line was giving him time, but they were like super inefficient with the deep balls. And then down the stretch and then all the way into the playoffs where they just absolutely boat raced the Cowboys, which we thought the game would be close, but I think we were kind of expecting, Dallas was a buzzsaw offensively too. The interesting thing there, that game against Dallas in the playoffs was the single best DVOA mark in Packers history from a quarterback. We're talking about Bart Starr, Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers. Like some of the DVOA stuff doesn't go back that far, but like over his last 8 regular season games, Love threw 18 scores with 1 pick, and his passer rating was almost perfect. So we know growth isn't linear, but there's a ton of young talent here, Connor. It's hard not to be bullish still on the Packers.
Yeah, the first 8 weeks of the season, they were 15th in EPA per play. Week 11 on, second in EPA per play, only behind the Niners. So what are we going to get? Like the first few weeks were ugly, as you mentioned. From there on, Jordan Love looked like one of the best quarterbacks in the league. So I don't know, to be honest. I really don't know, and I think that comes with some of the volatility of this team.
Yeah, that's the piece, right? Because we know like, it's just a big projection to say like, all right, we're going to just ignore the first half of the season, grab the second half. I do like to see that there were like changes in terms of play calling, motion, pre-snap motion, the amount of like shotgun stuff they were doing, pistol stuff they were doing, that changed a little bit too. They got younger at running back. I don't know if they got better. I think maybe a wash, but like we're a year removed from Josh Jacobs leading the league in rushing, playing behind a pretty mediocre offensive line, and the Packers offensive line is good. So I think that there should be some expectations there where, if Jacobs probably doesn't get the bell cow role that he had that led him to that with the Raiders to lead the league in rushing, but I think he can still be really good, and he's younger. I think that helps. Defensively, I think we need to be encouraged. What are your thoughts about what's going on defensively? I have a lot, but I would love to know kind of what your thoughts of moving on from Joe Barry and Jeff Hafley coming in.
Well, they've had like a good defense on paper for a while, but I think the Jeff Hafley upgrade there at defensive coordinator will be big. Added Xavier McKinney and Javon Bullard as their safety room. They added Edgerrin Cooper as well, who's a rookie. I think he'll play, at some point. But they looked solid on paper. We're 23rd in EPA per play. They're kind of like the Lions in a sense where I think that they take a step forward. How much of the step forward remains to be seen. Like, I just don't know what that looks like. So I think it really comes down to mostly Hafley, to be honest. And like Joe Barry's kind of stale scheme that really wasn't doing a whole lot. Again, matching up linebackers against like, CeeDee Lamb and, like slot receivers like consistently and just getting absolutely ripped. Justin Jefferson. I think hopefully he does a little bit less of that. I think he'll also be more aggressive. So again, it's like, I just think it's a little more volatile on both sides of the ball here because the defense should be better. I would assume they'll be better in some sense, but are they like go from 23rd to 15th or 23rd to like 9th? That's a pretty sizable leap there. And then kind of same thing with the offense. Like it's, which side do we get here? And that's why this Packers team as a whole, I just look at and kind of throw my arms in the air because the upside is there. We've seen it. But if both of the defense and the offense hits, like the Packers are probably going to win the division and maybe make a run to the Super Bowl. Like that's like the upside of this team. But if one of those things doesn't hit, they're probably like an 8, 9, 10 win team.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to sum it up because I think there's more projection here, right? We want the offense to use the second half of last season to project. And then we think, obviously I'm with you. I think there's an upgrade from Hafley. And I don't want to make more of it than it is because, it's preseason and we kind of get into this type of stuff as training camp rolls out. But like the quotes coming out from their key defenders, I think have been pretty eye opening in terms of like just how excited they are and how different it is. Like you made a great point. Like they would drop linebackers, they would drop edge rushers into coverage at like a really high rate. Like, should you really have Rashawn Gary like in coverage, or should that guy be like just pinning his ears back and going to the quarterback all the time? And like there's a ton of talent and young guys like on this defense, because they remember the Aaron Rodgers years. It was always like, will you please draft a wide receiver? And they'll like just keep like offensive line, early defensive guys. Like that's just what they did. And now they have all these guys. They only have one defender over the age of 30. There's a ton of talent up front. I think there's a lot of talent in the back half. They had some injuries last year at corner that I think helped some of those guys get more playing time. And now they've turned the kind of roles over to those guys that are kind of coming in. Xavier McKinney he's a great chess piece, the way you can use him. He could play in the box, excellent in coverage. He led all safeties in PFF's coverage grade last season. He's a willing tackler. Javon Bullard, you mentioned their second round pick. He played safety last year for them, but like the year before, he was the nickel in slot corner for them when they won the national championship. So like this kid can do it all too. So they're going to go more like single high, because Barry ran Fangio style, deep safeties, keep everything in front of you, eliminate the big plays. They couldn't generate pressure. They allowed the third highest rate of explosive plays in the league. So they were playing conservative and still like losing at the things that they were trying to win at. So that they couldn't create any turnover. 7 picks last year. Like it's like one of the lowest rates in the league. So I think you're just going to have more turnovers that are generated from pressure, from the way that the corners are going to be able to play and keep everything in front of them. I'm excited and optimistic about the defense. I kind of always have been for the last handful of years, because there's just so much talent, but I think the scheme is going to be pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's Chargers, East here kind of at this point. Like they were
for sure.
It's like, oh, these players are all so good, but then like they just are never that good. Like it just never pans out. A couple other notes: they're favored in 12 games this season. Pretty tough schedule overall, but they do get the Titans, Vikings, and Cardinals in 3 or 4 weeks in the middle of the season. So nice little stretch there to hopefully beat up on some teams.
Yeah, pretty neutral. They only play back-to-back road games once all season. And then because of that first game, it's technically a road game, like that Brazil game against the Eagles, neutral site game. They really only have 7 true road games. So that helps a little bit compared to the rest of, you're going to have the AFC teams playing 9 road games, the rest of the division and the rest of the conference playing 8. That's a little bit of a neutral win for them too. So yeah, I mean, 9.5, obviously juiced over. You had some early action, but Packers took some number. I think they were mid-20s to go to the Super Bowl. Now you're out to 19. Jordan Love to win MVP, took a lot of action. And then your win total is juiced. So not a lot of like super exciting ways. Probably 8-1 to win. The NFC is probably your best bang for your buck here in terms of what you would want to do if you're bullish on the upside scenario for the Packers. Not a bet for me, but like I think it's within the range of outcomes. I think they're one of the best teams in the NFC. So these teams are going to battle it out. It's going to be fun. All right. Any other Packers notes before we get the juices flowing here?
Not really. I don't even know if I have a best bet for them, just because like I just think they're really, really volatile. It was like, I think under 9.5, if I had to take, gun to head. But again, I think we talked about, just because I think that number's inflated because of their upside is so high.
Correct. Yeah. And he just got steamed, right? It moved so much when early stuff came out here. All right, man. The Bears 40-1 to win the Super Bowl. That is on Caesars. The best number for the conference is also on Caesars at 16. MGM has the best price if you want to back them to win the division. That is plus 3.25. Win total 8.5, juice to the over, out to a flat 9 on Caesars, though it is plus 110 if that is what you want to do. I mean, dude, I don't know what to do here, man. I mean, I want to temper expectations a little bit because they feel big, right? And because they're growing. And we're here in Chicago, in the greater Chicago area. I'm going to call it what it is here. The city did not want to let Justin Fields walk. I think it's shifted a little bit into excitement now because how the offseason is kind of played out. But locally, the idea of trading Justin Fields this offseason was not popular. Almost any Bears fan that I asked was against them starting over. I think Fields was fun. Those big highlight runs are intoxicating. But the Panthers, I think, made it very easy. We all agree that it was just very clear, the right decision. But, the Panthers backing into the number one pick because of what happened in Carolina, it feels like in a lot of ways they won the offseason, which obviously doesn't matter at the end of the day. You got to go out and play football. But I think they're going to start winning on the fields pretty early as well. What do you got with the Bears, bud?
Yeah, I'm excited, super excited about the Bears offense specifically here. You had Caleb Williams, Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, added interior offensive line help, a new offensive coordinator in Shane Waldron. You had DeAndre Swift, the running back. Like, even if Caleb isn't awesome right away, it doesn't matter. Their weapons are so good that they'll at least should be a league average or more offense. So I'm pumped for the offense specifically.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to be. Shout out to Cleve TA. He had some good data on this. If you just kind of back out and look at the 2023 season, it regress a lot of the variables just to the mean, like 2-6 record in one-score games, looking at stuff like blended fourth quarter win percentage over expectation. Like, this team could have made the playoffs in a lot of ways. Like, they were kind of alive a little bit. They had 3 losses last season that came in spots where they had a win probability of 80% or higher in the fourth quarter. Now, you're nerding out here a little bit, just for perspective. On the season, teams in that scenario, win probability of 80% or higher in the fourth quarter, league-wide, went 182-9. The Bears lost 3 of those. They had 3 of those 9 losses. So they gave some games back. And some of these things we just see historically. Look at the Vikings last year. The one-score game thing, I think, is sometimes a little bit noisy if you just kind of paint it with a broad brush, because I don't think all one-score games are created equal. But they're just historically, those things over the course of a couple of years seem to even themselves out. So there's some upside here. The offense, as you said, this is the way to do it. I love when you push all the chips in, when you have a quarterback on a rookie deal. Keenan Allen trade, even if you only get 1 or 2 solid years out of him, fantastic. What he can do for Rome Odunze and DJ Moore, just in terms of learning by osmosis and teaching them some of the things that he knows. Like, I was massive on Rome Odunze coming out. I love that they went and locked it up. They didn't add to the defensive side of the football or add another offensive line, because I thought the offensive line was okay. Like, they have depth in the running back room. They have depth in the tight end room. Yeah, again, if the offensive line can stay together, I think we're good here. Shane Waldron, I think the one thing you can definitely say about him is he's adapted to what they have talent-wise with his time in Seattle, right? What he did with some Russ stuff, maybe what he did with some Geno stuff, looked a little bit different depending on what they had. And I think that's all you can really ask for an OC is like, hey, here's my system. What can we do to win? What does my team look like? And then we go out and do it. And I think that's what we're going to have here. So they're just the buffer for Caleb in year 1 is just really solid.
Yeah, I mean, the reason they were so bad in one-score games last year is because Justin Fields blew like 3 of them. I mean, just because he's not a good quarterback. Like, that is the reality. And we've talked about it before. Like, he just blew it. He threw multiple game-losing interceptions and multiple back-breaking drives. Like, it was him. He is the reason that they didn't go to the playoffs. But now I'm pumped for the offense. And defensively, week 9 on, after they acquired Montez Sweat, Bears defense 5th in EPA per play, 10th in success rate. They did lose Yannick Ngakoue and Justin Jones, but I think overall they still have a great unit. People have already been, local beats have been saying that their cornerback room is looking great now that they're fully healthy. So I'm, cautiously optimistic. Do I think that they're a top 5 defense? No, like, they probably overplayed their hand with the schedule that they played against, but I don't know, maybe 7 to 12-ish range, I think is very much squarely in the range of outcomes.
Yeah, I mean, look, what do you want in the back half of your defense, right? You want linebackers that can cover, blitz, and tackle efficiently. They have 3 of them. At corner, ideally, you want a lockdown guy, right? You can limit the other team's top option. You want a capable guy opposite of him because he's going to get a little bit more work because they want to avoid the top option. And then you want a slot guy who's capable coverage-wise, not afraid to mix it up because he's just proximity-wise closer to the line of scrimmage. And they have all of it. Jalen Johnson is the real deal. Got the bag this offseason. He ranked 2nd in PFF's coverage grade last season. Tyreek Stevens, if you look at his PFF game grades last season, it's just this. It's just straight upward trajectory. He balled out towards the tail end of the season. Now, you said they picked on some bad quarterbacks. They were opportunistic. They made some interceptions. That's great. You can generate some pressure. All of a sudden, you can do those things. And Kyler Gordon, 2nd year in the slot, really strong. He's allowed the 5th lowest QB passer rating of any slot cornerback in the league last year. It's just a legit group. You have Jaquan Brisker, is one of the best safeties in the league. They added Kevin Byard. They added Jonathan Owens. It's just there's depth there too. So again, it becomes, can they do the things that Detroit is able to do for Hutch with allowing Sweat to avoid double teams? Can they get creative? Can they have someone of the other guys? Walker, they took Booker in the fifth round. I think I really like that kid out of Kansas. Like, can they find someone else opposite of Sweat to generate some pressure? Because the back end is really, really strong. So, yeah, I mean, they probably outkicked their coverage a little bit towards the tail end of the season, but like the talent's there, and they were great against the run. No reason to think they're not going to be, again, another, top 10 unit against the run out of the gates. And then I think the secondary just healthy this season coming out, I think is just going to be strong. So yeah, it's hard not to be optimistic again, even though it feel like it's inflated. Everyone likes the Bears. It feels like just kind of like they're a public team almost at this point, which is wild. With a win total of like up to 9, Connor, is just bizarre. But like, look at the schedule.
Right.
It is ideal. It is soft up front. Let your rookie quarterback find his footing, figure it out a little bit. Easier than everyone else in the division and in the conference. It gets a little bit harder down the stretch, but from a unique 3 standpoint, like Carolina, New England, and the Commanders. And you look at who else they're like, who the other teams are playing. Like the Lions get Buffalo and at Dallas. The Packers have to play Miami, Philadelphia, and the Saints. The Vikings, Jets, and Falcons. Like it's so much easier for the Bears. The path is easier.
They have 7 games that are like they're legitimately better, and they should be favored in heavily. You already talked about multiple of them, but the Vikings twice, as well. And then they played the Seahawks, Jags, and Rams. So I think that they're a little bit better than them, but like it's close. And then I think they'll have competitive games against the Packers, Lions, Texans, and Colts. Like those are like games that they're like, there's 7 to 10 games that I think they're clearly better than teams. And then like the rest are all toss-ups. You can't really ask for much more than that. Like, and so you look at the win total, like, man, 9 wins, a lot of wins. Sure, but they're playing against a bunch of bad teams, and then they're going to be competitive in the other games. Like, they're going to win some games they shouldn't, maybe lose 1 or 2 games that they shouldn't, but like, it really shouldn't, the floor shouldn't be that low, especially if their defense plays at all reasonable. And Caleb is like, he doesn't even need to be as advertised. That's the thing. It's like Caleb Williams does not need to put the team on his back or do anything he had to do at USC. He just has to be solid. Like, he has to be Jared Goff level light, in year 1, and the Bears are going to be a 10-win team. So, and if he's any good, they can win like 11, 12 games.
Yeah, I think plus 100 you could find, I think, on Caesars to make the playoffs, which is, a great way to use your funds. It's up to you. Depends on your bankroll, but I think just wanted to state this is where we are with the Bears. Like they are basically, a coin flip to make the playoffs, which is, a markedly different standpoint than where we were over the last handful of years with Justin Fields and stuff. So it's, and it's going to get more expensive, right? Because as you laid out the schedule early, like the only team they're like confidently dogs against is week 2 in Houston. They're otherwise favorited or, favored or a coin flip against everyone else. So it's going to be interesting. And the buzz is going to get louder if everything goes as we are kind of talking about here today. So again, 3 really, really, really strong teams to kick off this division.
Yeah. And
next is Minnesota. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. Real quick, Jeff asked a question to me multiple times. DJ Moore, season touchdowns over under 6.5. This is not a player prop show, Jeff, but I will answer your question anyways. I'm a little worried about taking overs on any of these guys because I think that Odunze is awesome and Keenan Allen is also still has juice. And DJ Moore is fantastic, but I think he sees less volume, but just like is super efficient with it. So I don't know. It's kind of a wait and see thing for me, but I think that the way to play it is just to take alts on them in season, like on different games, because there will be value because their median line is going to be lower, but like their upside each game is like insanely high. So that's kind of how I'm approaching the Bears right now. The Bears and the Texans for that matter. I think both those teams have like amazing wide receivers that are very, ambiguous, I guess, target shares right now. And I feel good about all the guys that they have there, but it's kind of a wait and see approach because I don't want to take a stand preseason. Yeah,
that makes sense. And then touchdowns too is just, it's not something you and I spend a lot of time messing around with, even, on a weekly basis. I know people like touchdowns are fun. Like I don't want to be that dude here and rain on anyone's parade. It just, especially from a season-long standpoint, knowing especially Connor's going to be very reluctant to take an over on anything season-long wise. And really everyone should be. Like the math is the math on season-long over props. Like it just, there's so many outs on the under. And, I understand why someone would look at that number and think that it's interesting for DJ Moore, but in terms of how the DJ Moore could absolutely ball out again, catch 80 balls and 1,200 yards and catch 4 touchdowns because they just Keenan Allen and the Dunze and the tight ends happen to catch more touchdowns. Like it's a little bit more random.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, Minnesota, 80-1 to win the Super Bowl, which is obviously a little bit different compared to everyone else in the division. They are 40-1 to win the conference. They are 10-1 to win the division. DraftKings has best in market for basically all of that. Win total 7.5, juice to the under, flat 7 on Caesars, which is interesting there too. All right, they're 2023, pretty uneven year, coming off of a wild 2022. Again, like that, 11-0 or something crazy in 1-score games, and then he got bounced by the Giants in the playoffs and got off to a slow start. Justin Jefferson got injured in week 5, and eventually Kirk Cousins goes down. Looking back, pretty surprising that they had like some really bad quarterback play from Dobbs and Mullins at times, just really bad. To go 7-10 with everything that happened to them. Again, hit the reset button a little bit. Quarterback, signed Sam Darnold to a 1-year deal. Had a couple of draft picks in the first round. They flirted with trading up into the top 5. They were able to basically stay put, moved up 1 spot, got J.J. McCarthy out of Michigan. J.J., as we touched on in the draft season, like very polarizing prospect, mostly because he just wasn't asked to do much of anything in Michigan. But again, some people that I respect and people that, again, we just know quarterback evaluations are very difficult, but people think that J.J. maybe can be that guy. But I think we all knew that this was the premier landing spot for any of the top tier quarterbacks, right? Maybe Caleb aside, that come in here with the weapons that they have, with Kevin O'Connell, who I think is the real deal, definitely seems to be in terms of former NFL quarterback and has the ability to maybe elevate at that position. It's a really good spot. I don't know who we see day one at quarterback. The Vikings are at least interesting. It's not a bad football team, but I think I'm confident with them being the 4th team in this division.
Early reports are that Sam Darnold's almost certainly starting. J.J. McCarthy wasn't even seeing 2nd team reps. He was the 3rd quarterback in rotation right now. Just again, it's the 2nd day of training camp, whatever. But still, starting him there means he has an uphill climb to be the starting quarterback, especially in week 1. Good offensive line. We have them ranked 11th. I think there's major questions about Jordan Addison's DUI. He'll almost certainly miss, I would say, 4 to 6 games this year. TJ Hawkinson probably won't return until week 8 or 9. And even then probably won't be at full strength until week 12, 13. The running game, I think, should be solid this year offensively with Aaron Jones and Ty Chandler. Jones is super explosive, so I think that could be exciting. Defensively, it seemed like they kind of just broke even, lost DJ Wanham and Daniel Hunter, added Van Ginkel and Jonathan Greenard, and also drafted Dallas Turner. So maybe a little better. Brian Flores, I think, has historically made the most of bad defenses, kind of just been blitzing a ton, kind of masking any of their issues by being uber aggressive in a sense. So I don't know, I guess my biggest issue though here with this team is the schedule combined with quarterback play, combined with weapons that might not be 100% the entire year, because in their first games leading to the bye is they're 1-point favorites against the Giants, but it's on the road against the Giants. So again, this is not a guarantee, on the road. Then they're 6-point dogs against San Fran, 3.5-point dogs against Houston, 5-point dogs against Green Bay, and then 4-point dogs against the Jets. That's their first 5 games heading to the bye. They're not certainly 1-4, but I feel way better. If I had to bet on most of these teams right now, it would be the other team, not Minnesota, against the spread, and their dogs in all those games. And then they come out of the bye, 3-point dogs at Detroit, 3.5-point dogs against the Rams. They play 6 playoff games in their first 7, 6 playoff teams in their first 7 games. So I don't know. When do we see JJ McCarthy? It's just really tough. So even though I think that they're probably a league average, maybe a little bit below league average team, given the quarterback play and the questions there, and maybe some other questions with the offensive weapons. I don't know. I have a lot of questions about this team, winning a ton of games this year.
Yeah, there is a bottom here that is, as you said, it gets off to a rough start and things just do not click. Defensively, I have a lot of thoughts. I like Brian. I like what Brian Flores does. I like the fact that he is doing something that no one else does. I think it makes it harder from a week-to-week standpoint to game plan against them, because you just don't see what they do any other time in the season, right? And you have time to prepare for it. They're in the division, and you kind of know that helps a little bit. But just from a week-to-week standpoint, it's so different. They brought 5 or more pass rushers on nearly 52% of the snaps last season. That's the most in over a decade. Like no one's even really close. Now the problem is they weren't overly successful, right? They when you bring extra bodies and you don't get home, that becomes a problem. So they allowed a 63% success rate on blitzes that didn't generate pressure. So that becomes a problem. You gotta get home. Now you touched on kind of the names and some of the bodies that shifted in and out. Kind of a wash, maybe a little bit better. They're younger, right? Like Grenard had a great year, broke out last year with the Texans. I think that can help. Van Ginkel had his best year ever in Miami. Flores drafted him. They know him very well. He allows them to be super multiple, and that's what Flores loves. Like, Josh Metellus, one of the safeties, he's just not even really a safety. He's like a linebacker. They'll bring a ton of guys, stand them all up at the line, and you have no idea who's coming and who's not. Now, if you can figure it out, you can pick them apart because the secondary is bad, and the secondary got worse yesterday. They lost Mekhi Blackman, who tore his ACL. Blackman was really supposed to be on the outside with Shaq Griffin, who also isn't great, but they brought him in. Like, he got released by the Texans last year, couldn't get on the field with the Panthers when they picked him up. Those guys were supposed to lock down the outside so they can move Byron Murphy back to the slot. Byron Murphy's really good in the slot, had to play a lot outside last year, did not go very well. But he's probably going to have to be back outside again. So it just, when you bring pressure at such a high rate, it puts so much pressure on the back end anyway, even if you get home, right? Like, because the ball's coming out so quickly. If you don't get home, man, those guys are they're in trouble in the back end, and it's a bad group. It's the worst group of any of the groups on the defensive side of the ball. That also, there's just more of a floor there in terms of what they can do in the secondary because they just don't have difference makers. They took 2 swings in the draft 2 years ago with like Lewis Cine and Andrew Booth. Those guys they might not even make the team. That was a first and second round pick. Those guys like early picks, and they're not even probably making the team, right? So they're not even really going to be impactful players. So that's tough to kind of make up for that stuff too. So yeah, just there's more floor with Minnesota. Schedule as you laid out is tough. This puts more talent on the coaching staff, right? O'Connell has to be a talent maximizer for whoever's at quarterback, dealing with the injuries and suspensions and all those things that are going on there. And Flores has to coach his face off again in hopes that they can kind of protect the secondary that's lacking. It's just a lot of pressure on those guys.
Yeah, it's a ton. And even if you look at the back half of the schedule, like there's a lot of closer games, especially according to look headlines. But you look at the teams that they're playing, like it's a lot of teams that could take a leap here. Like the Colts, the Jags are like a fringe, again, 8-9 win team. They're not bad either. The Titans, I think, will be fine. Like they play the Bears twice in the back half. The Cardinals are going to be better. The Falcons, like they don't have a single game on the schedule outside of the Giants where you're like, oh, they're better than this team. Like those are the games you look for. And you're like, okay, like they can win this game. Like they're not better than like basically any of these teams, in my opinion. So I don't know. It's just really tough for me to see. I know that there's been a lot of early Vikings love. They're up to 7 wins in some markets. I think under 7 is a pretty solid look, even at a little bit of juice.
I'm with you there. I just think like, I don't know what the upside is, right? Like even reaching their upside, like you would need something, you need an injury, a pretty catastrophic injury, maybe cluster injuries to the other 3 teams, right? Like Caleb gets hurt and things go really bad in Chicago. I think that that changes the dynamic. But even then, like what is Minnesota's ceiling with the Packers and Lions still in the division? They still got to play those teams a couple times, and the rest of the schedule, as you laid out, is tough. Like it feels like 8 is maybe their ceiling, right? And that might not be fair, but like it kind of does feel like that's the case, especially if the Addison stuff doesn't bode well. If there's any other injuries, like the depth of the wide receiver behind Jefferson and Addison is not really great. So yeah, I have concerns there. Like I don't think it's a bad football team. I think because the coaching staff is good, because what you're going to see from Flores is different, it is a little bit harder. But like you said, the Giants is your easiest game. You get that right away, right? So it doesn't mean you're getting the best of the Giants, but you're probably getting the healthiest of the Giants at least, right? And that's not great either. So there's just more downside, I think, to the Vikings than maybe any other team. And yeah, I'm probably going to lean and take the under as probably one of the best bets here.
Yeah, and then even with like in week 1 against the Giants, like you won't have Hawkinson at all. So right. And then Addison, like I mean, maybe the suspension it's now, maybe it's midseason. Like, we really have no idea. If it's now, then what? Just Justin Jefferson. I mean, I don't even who's even their depth at this point. Like I mean, there's just like all these randos that and some NPCs, just running routes out there. So I mean, obviously Justin Jefferson's awesome, but like I don't know. It's serious questions with Darnold. starting, who again played better with San Francisco. But I think that citing San Francisco stats is like stupid. I feel like that like doesn't make sense because again, Shanahan's made every single quarterback in San Francisco look good like forever.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's also I think O'Connell is not to that level at all. He's not done it as well or as long, but he's also a guy that made Josh Dobbs look exciting for a little while too, right? And like those were Dobbs starts without Justin Jefferson, and they were still kind of figuring it out. So like I think O'Connell's a guy that can piece it together at quarterback. I'm almost not even really worried about quarterback for them. As you said, it's who can support Jefferson and what happens to the defense. Like I was going to be a little down on the defense anyway, but then like the Blackman thing really hurts them because like he showed some signs last year. It's his second year. Like thought maybe that helps kind of put the rest of the pieces in place. Then you got to kind of shift, Murphy out of position. Jack Griffin's not that guy. And again, now all of a sudden you need more from some of these guys that are fringe players that really maybe shouldn't be taking meaningful snaps all the time. So it is just way more downside for this team. So yeah, I'm comfortable with the Vikings, even though I think they could be okay. But I think okay still is 8 wins. I don't think this is a playoff team. So I've seen some love for Vikings to make the playoffs or over on the win total, and it's just a bridge too far for me.
Yeah, totally agree. And that's probably one of my best looks would be Vikings under. And then I think Bears over even at 8.5 juice or 9 wins is pretty solid, mostly just because of the schedule and because I think the upside there is pretty strong. I want to find like a long shot way to play the Bears, but I don't know if there really is one, to be honest. Like it's like I don't know if they have the juice to really make a run in the NFC or anything. I don't know, like, but I am interested in them. I don't know, maybe it'll just be a week-to-week basis, like alt spreads, stuff like that. Because they're gonna wreck some teams. I'm just not sure when and who.
I don't even know if this is a good way. So I'll pitch this because this is kind of a way that I want to get access to the Lions is maybe through player futures, right? Like, maybe awards markets. Hutch is 16-1 to win defensive player of the year. That's interesting. Goff is 25-1 to win the MVP. But look, I mean, he's put up some video game numbers at times, like shockingly, and when he's okay, when he's healthy and like protected, we touched on that. Like, so I'd probably prefer the Hutch side.
Yeah, he suffers from like Tua syndrome, like kind of like the same, like it's McDaniel, it's Tyreek, it's Jalen Waddle, like that whole syndrome, like it's kind of the same thing because we've seen Goff be absolute garbage when he doesn't have anything around him, and then now he's all of a sudden awesome. So I kind of like I get it because he will probably have an awesome season, but like at the end of the day, it's like I think Tua was in like the MVP lead / conversation for like 2-3 weeks towards the end of the year, but then he had like one bad game and it was just like over. Like the floor is just like so fragile. The Goff Week 16 game against Chicago will be the ender to his MVP debate when he throws like for 120 yards and 2 picks and 10-degree weather in Chicago.
It's a great point. Yeah. When you look at, like I said, you look at the clean pocket stuff.
Amazing. Yeah.
Success rate, first down rate, like, all of that stuff is through the roof. I guess the long way of saying it is I like Hutch defensive player of the year as a long way to get better prices on good things happening in Detroit. Montez Sweat is 60-1 on FanDuel. He's 30 in like everywhere else for defensive player of the year. And again, like it's not necessarily a straight line, but it's a way to like maybe, hey, a bullish upsides on everything that happens in Chicago. And like Sweat has to be, if they're going to be, I think the ceiling team that we think, it has to be Sweat having a really great year. So a lot of pressure on him too. So maybe like a better price to find access to some good Bears things happening there too. So Jeff's out here in the chat trying to really take a dump on the city of Chicago. Look, these Bears fans are thirsty for good stuff. I was looking at I forget where I saw it, and I apologize. I will have to give credit. Basically, if Caleb Williams has the season that Derek Carr had last year, no one's like moved by that statement. Those are all-time numbers for Chicago quarterbacks. He would set touchdown records. He would set yards, passing records. That's how bad this storied franchise's quarterback situation has been for like 100 years. They've been around forever, and they have had nothing at the quarterback position. And now they have a quarterback with a pulse and it's hard. And they gave him weapons, and their schedule is easy. And maybe they have a defense, so it's super hard not to be excited about what's going on for the Bears. So I think it's better for the league if the Bears are good, and I think it's going to be exciting.
It's funny because I talk to Bears fans decent amount, and almost always the last, 5-10 years, they're always way more confident than the market is on the Bears. Like they, the whole Justin Fields area, they're like, oh, they're going to the playoffs. Like Justin Fields is the next top 10 QB. And I think anyone who's watched the show before knows that I was on alt unders basically every single year for the Bears as long as Justin Fields is quarterback. And now I'm like, hey, the Bears are awesome. Like they're going to be great. This is a good team. And the opposite happens. The Bears fans are like, well, I'll believe it when I see it. It's like, I'm not really sure. Like they're skeptical. They are skeptical. And it's crazy because like, this is the first time in, I don't know, maybe NFL fan base history that a team's fan base is like, I don't know, guy paints his nails, he cries, like he's kind of short, like he holds the ball too long. Isn't that what Justin Fields does? Like just all the arguments, they just are totally missing the point here. So I am 100% in on the Bears this year. If, if they let me down the city of Chicago, I'll be like, yeah, see, I told you. But I mean, I'm just so confident that I think that they're going to be at least average and maybe really, really fun.
Yeah. They're like waiting for the sky to fall. They're a beaten, scorned widow, like who just is just waiting for the other shoe to drop. Cause it's like, no, we don't deserve good things. We don't have good things, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Every good Bears team ever, it's just been because they have like a historically great defense. Bears playoff runs because the defense is awesome. The Urlacher era is just really good defensive units. It's never been because the quarterback was elevating. They never had a wide receiver room like this. Just never, ever. And they don't know what to do with it. They're just like, well, it's not going to go well. Someone's going to get hurt. They're going to suck. They're going to disappoint. It's wild. It's sad to watch in a way. Like I'm excited for them to, have the shades lifted and feel like, hey, this is a real thing. Like this is actually NFL football.
Like each of DJ Moore, Roma Dunza, and Keenan Allen are three of the best, would be top 5 receivers in the last 20 years for the Bears. Like,
yes, Jeff, every Bears team ever.
Alshon Jeffrey, end list. Maybe
Mushu Muhammad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. And then those 3 guys, like some mix of those 6 guys basically are the best wide receivers that the Bears have had in the last 20 something years.
Jeff, yes, every Bears team ever. So 1985. Yes. That like I think you're my age-ish, right? Like that was we were kids, we were younger. They beat up on our Patriots. That was a historic defensive unit, right? It was Jim McMahon. Right? Yeah, they had Walter Payton, but like Jim McMahon wasn't getting it done. They had some speed on the outside, but it wasn't like a prolific passing offense. Like that wasn't a thing at all. So, yeah, great division. Again, I think that they are 2 legitimate Super Bowl teams with the Lions and the Packers. I am afraid to go there with the Bears. I don't think that that's within their range of outcomes this year, but I expect them to be a really good football team and would not be surprised if this is a 3 playoff team division. And the really odds will tell you that that's kind of what is expected, right? And I think we probably see it in the North on the AFC side as well. It's really good teams over there. We expect to see, we've seen this a couple times in the last handful of years, even with the move to 7 teams in the playoffs now, you can get 3 in the division. And I think this is probably one of them.
Yep. Totally agree.
So, yeah, I don't want to go as far as to say that the Lions are going to the Super Bowl, but man, I'd be really, if they don't lose Goff, Hutch, Amon-Ra, and Laporta, like they keep those 4 guys all year long, maybe even Penny Sewell, maybe they have the depth to kind of survive that there too. This is a really, really, really good team. So excited to this division got my juices flowing for football, Connor. Like I am ready for games, and we got preseason next week, and we're close. This is really good.
Yeah, I mean, like the Vikings would be like the second best team in the NFC, whatever South that we just talked about the week before this. And these other 3 teams are just so good. So I'm excited. It's gonna be so fun.
Yeah. Birdie with a late question. Got here late, catching up. No concern that Jacobs' running style does not fit with what LaFleur does in that system. I mean, I don't have a ton in that. I think sometimes that could be a little bit overblown in terms of like zone blocking scheme and zone read, first read, all that stuff. Like, obviously, I think there are at the tails. I think there are scenarios where that stuff can matter. I think Josh Jacobs is a really talented running back and can figure it out. And again, he's playing behind a significantly upgraded offensive line than anything he ever had there as well. So like, is he a difference maker in us? I don't know. I think he's good enough to keep the ball rolling there with they want to do, run the football.
I'm a big Marshawn Lloyd guy. I think that they've
Yeah.
talked about getting him in space and like, using him more. Like, I think that probably the roles are reversed. Like Josh Jacobs is probably like the, 13 to 17 a touch a game guy, but I think Marshawn Lloyd fits in like the 8 to 10 touch range right off the rip. And if Josh Jacobs isn't playing well, and they're, again, almost all early down stuff, maybe a little bit of pass catching work, I think Marshawn Lloyd, that can continue to be like a 1-2 punch there. So I don't know. I like Marshawn Lloyd in a variety of things, but I'm excited to see his usage.
Yeah. And this is another nice thing they have there too, right? It's an upgrade in terms of the running back room overall, because I think Dylan was such a just a limited player, and I think this helps. The dynamic with the duo there, I think, is nice. So, all right, that wraps up NFC North. Again, you can check out over on the 4for4 Bets YouTube channel, We'll Move the Line podcast. If you want to hear our thoughts on the NFC South and the NFC East, we've already had those two in the bag. We'll be back next week to wrap up the NFC with the West, and then we'll continue going on here with the AFC sooner than later. So subscribe to the podcast, rate and review, all those things. Same thing. Hit us with a thumbs up. Jump in the chat here on the YouTube channel if you're watching. Let us know what your thoughts, best bets are. Anything to be player prop, player wise, or divisions here for the NFC North. We appreciate it. So for Connor, I'm Ryan. We'll see y'all next time. Thanks, everyone.